I worked 2 jobs to pay my wife's $300,000 med school. Then she left me for her professor. I was 22 when I met Ashley. She was all about big dreams and even bigger ambitions. Wanted to be a doctor, save lives, make a difference. Me, I just wanted a steady life. Nothing flashy, just a good job, a house, maybe a dog. But love makes you do crazy things, right? We got married when she got into med school. And that's when reality kicked in. Tuition was insane. $300,000 in student loans, and we weren't even counting rent, food, or the million other expenses that piled up faster than I could keep track. So, I did what any loving husband would do. I stepped up. I put my own plans on hold and worked my asterisk off. First, my regular job at an auto shop, then evening shifts at a warehouse. On weekends, I'd do food deliveries. Sleep? That was a luxury. Going out? Forget it. My life became one big cycle of work, bills, and making sure Ashley had everything she needed to focus on her studies. At first, it felt worth it. She was stressed, but she was grateful. Told me I was her rock, that she couldn't do it without me. And I believed it, every single word. I ignored the exhaustion, the loneliness, the fact that our conversations became shorter, her texts less frequent. I brushed it off, thinking, she's just busy. Med school is brutal. But as the years went by, something changed. Ashley started coming home later and later. First, it was study groups, then extra lab work, then networking events. She stopped asking how my day was, stopped noticing when I looked like a walking corpse from working 2 jobs. One night, I came home from a 14-hour shift, absolutely drained, and found the fridge empty. She had eaten out. Again. Didn't even think to bring me anything. It was a small thing, but it hit me like a truck. I sat there in our tiny apartment, staring at the pile of bills on the table, my hands covered in grease from the auto shop, my back aching from lifting crates at the warehouse, and I just felt it, that sinking feeling in my gut. The one that tells you something is off, even if you can't put your finger on it yet. Then it started happening more often. She'd text that she was staying late at the library but wouldn't answer her phone. She'd come home smelling like fancy restaurant food, dressed up when I knew she had no reason to be. When I asked about it, she laughed it off. "You're being paranoid," she said. "You work too much. You need sleep." And maybe she was right. Maybe I was just exhausted. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But deep down, I knew better. Because when someone starts finding excuses not to come home, it's never a good sign. It wasn't just the late nights. It was the way she started dressing. Brand new outfits, expensive bags, perfume that wasn't cheap. And don't get me started on the phone. Always face down, always on silent. When I'd walk into the room, she'd quickly tuck it away, like she was hiding state secrets. And I kept telling myself I was overthinking. But man, let me tell you, when your gut tells you something's up, you listen. Then there was the gym. Ashley never cared about working out before. Suddenly, she had a membership at this high-end place downtown. Stress relief, she called it. Funny, because I was the one who actually had stress. And somehow, I was the only one gaining weight while she was out getting toned. The worst part, I still wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that all of this was just in my head, that maybe I really was just overworked and paranoid. But then she started forgetting to come home altogether. The late nights, the gym obsession, the expensive clothes, it was all adding up to something I wasn't ready to admit. But the part that really got to me, she was still fine with taking my money. Rent, groceries, her endless tuition. Every single bill still landed on my shoulders while she was out studying. I tried to push the thoughts away, told myself I was just tired, just insecure. But then, one evening at work, my buddy James casually dropped a bomb on me. Said he saw Ashley at some fancy downtown restaurant, and she wasn't alone. I laughed it off, played dumb. But inside, my stomach twisted into knots. James wasn't the type to stir drama, and the way he described it, let's just say, study partners don't stare at each other like that over a candlelit dinner. That night, I tried to act normal, asked Ashley how her day was. She gave me some vague answer about group projects and fell asleep like she had nothing to hide. And that's when I saw it, her phone, face up for once, lighting up with a text. From Dr. Nick. I didn't even have to open it to know. My heart just sank. Nick. The name felt like a slap in the face. I knew who he was. One of her professors. Late 30s, well respected, married, at least. I thought he was. But that text, the 3 little dots popping up again, showing he was still typing, that told me everything I needed to know. I grabbed my phone and started searching. Nothing on her social media, no weird tags or posts. But then I found an old conference photo buried in her album. Ashley, standing next to Nick, his arm around her waist. She had this look, one I hadn't seen in years. The kind of look she used to give me. And I wasn't even the crazy part. I dug a little deeper, scrolled through her emails, and found something I wish I hadn't. A thread from a year ago. Ashley venting to him about her tough marriage, how she felt trapped with someone who didn't understand her ambitions. And the worst part, he understood. At least, that's what he told her. I sat there, staring at the screen, reading every word. My wife, the woman I worked myself to the bone for, had been building an escape plan with someone else. For a year. And in that moment, something in me snapped. I put the phone down, took a deep breath, and tried to process it. My brain was racing, my hands shaking. I walked into the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked exhausted, like a guy who'd been fighting for something that didn't even exist anymore. I went back to bed, but sleep? Not a chance. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage in my head. Every late night, every excuse, every time she brushed me off. And I realized something. This wasn't new. It had been happening right in front of me for a long time. I had just been too blind to see it. Morning came, and Ashley acted like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her coffee, and headed out the door like it was just another day. But for me, everything had changed. Because now, I wasn't just suspicious. I knew. I woke up that morning knowing I couldn't pretend anymore. My mind was set. I had to confront her. No more second-guessing. No more convincing myself that I was overreacting. When Ashley walked in that evening, she barely acknowledged me. Like I was a roommate, not her husband. She tossed her bag on the counter, scrolled through her phone, completely unfazed. That was it. No more waiting. I asked her straight up. No yelling, no anger. Just a question hanging in the air between us. Her reaction? Nothing. No shock, no guilt, no scrambling for excuses. Just a deep sigh like I was inconveniencing her. She put her phone down, looked at me, and said it flat out. She had outgrown me. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it's not what you think. She just said she had changed, evolved, and I was still stuck in the same place. Like I was some old t-shirt she'd finally decided to throw out. She told me to be an adult about it. That relationships sometimes run their course. That she had bigger things ahead, and I should just understand. Understand? I worked 2 jobs to support her dream. I drained my savings, my energy, my entire life, so she could chase hers. And now I was supposed to just accept that I was a phase she had outgrown. She wasn't even sorry. That was the part that hit the hardest. She spoke like she had been planning this for months, maybe longer. And then she hit me with the real kicker. She had already filed for divorce. I felt like I had been sucker punched. The papers were in motion. She had started the process weeks ago, maybe even before I found out. And she hadn't said a damn word. She got up, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge like we were just discussing dinner plans, and said she hoped we could do this amicably. Amicably? She had been lying to my face for who knows how long, and now she wanted to play the let's be adults card? I didn't yell, didn't beg. I just stood there, staring at her, realizing that the person I had sacrificed everything for didn't even exist anymore. And honestly, maybe she never did. I let out a dry laugh, the kind that comes out when you're too stunned to do anything else. She looked at me like I was the one being ridiculous, like I was the unreasonable one here. Then she just shrugged, grabbed her phone again, and walked toward the bedroom. I heard her texting someone as she walked away, probably Nick, probably confirming whatever plans they had lined up after this little talk. I sat down on the couch, staring at nothing in particular, the weight of it all pressing down on me. My whole life had been centered around her, every decision I made, every sacrifice. And now, it was like I had been holding on to a ghost, someone who had already left a long time ago, but just never bothered to tell me. I glanced at the wedding photo still sitting on the shelf. The smiling couple in the frame looked like strangers. I wasn't that guy anymore, and she sure as hell wasn't the woman I married. For the first time in years, I had no idea what came next. The divorce process hit me like a freight train, fast, brutal, and completely unfair. I walked into that courtroom thinking, at the very least, I'd get to keep what I had worked for. Turns out, the law didn't care about effort. It only cared about what was fair in a marriage. Ashley barely looked at me during the proceedings. She sat there next to her lawyer, all composed and confident, like this was just another day. Meanwhile, I was the guy who had been grinding for years to support her dreams, only to be told that everything I sacrificed, it was now community property. The judge didn't care that I was the one working 60-hour weeks while she was off networking. The student loans I took on to help her, those were on me. The house? Sold, profit split down the middle. Every single dime I had poured into our life together, legally, it was never mine to begin with. I walked out of that courtroom with barely enough to cover rent for a shoebox apartment. I had to swallow my pride and borrow money from my parents just to get back on my feet. It wasn't just about losing money. It was the sheer humiliation of it all. Watching her walk away with half of everything I worked for, while I was back to square one, rebuilding from scratch. I tried to stay positive. I really did. I told myself that money comes and goes, that I could make it back. But the truth? It wasn't just about the money. It was about the principle, the betrayal, the fact that I had spent years building a future with someone who had one foot out the door the entire time. And Ashley? She didn't waste a second. The ink on the divorce papers was barely dry before she packed up and moved in with Nick, the same guy who had apparently been waiting in the wings for this exact moment. At first, I tried to ignore it, move on, focus on rebuilding. I got a small place. Nothing fancy, but mine. Threw myself into work, started hitting the gym again, even got back into old hobbies I had forgotten about. But then, one night, I got a text from an old friend. Turns out, Professor Nick wasn't just playing house with my ex-wife. He was in the middle of a divorce himself, leaving his wife for Ashley. And that gave me an idea. Revenge wasn't something I had ever really considered before. But after everything Ashley put me through, after the humiliation, the betrayal, and losing everything I worked for, let's just say I wasn't feeling particularly forgiving. The idea came to me after that text from my friend about Nick's divorce. At first, I just laughed at the irony. The guy who understood Ashley so well was now blowing up his own life for her. But then I remembered something. Universities have strict policies about faculty-student relationships. And Nick, he was still on staff. I started digging. Turns out, medical schools don't look too kindly on professors getting involved with students, even if they're adults. It's a massive ethics violation, and with enough proof, a career-ending one. Luckily, I had plenty of proof. Old messages, emails, even the financial records showing just how much I had invested in her education. I had a full digital trail of their relationship, going back way longer than Ashley ever admitted. I packaged everything up, screenshots, photos, timestamps, and sent an anonymous report to the university's ethics committee. No anger, no threats. Just cold, hard facts. And then I waited. It didn't take long for things to unravel. The university launched an investigation. Nick was put on administrative leave almost immediately. And Ashley? Well, let's just say she wasn't quite as untouchable as she thought. The moment the news got out, their little fairy tale romance started crumbling. Nick's colleagues turned on him. His reputation, something he had spent years building, was suddenly in shambles. And when the final verdict came down, he was fired. Ashley wasn't spared either. The school put her academic standing under review. She wasn't expelled, but she was temporarily suspended, meaning she was stuck in limbo. No classes, no clinical rotations, just a whole lot of time to reflect on her choices. I heard through the grapevine that she lost it when she found out, screaming, blaming everyone but herself. But me? I just went about my day, enjoying the sweet, quiet satisfaction of knowing that, for once, life was finally holding her accountable. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. I kept my ear to the ground. Turns out, Nick's wife wasn't taking the divorce quietly. She wasn't the type to just fade into the background. She fought him for everything, his house, his assets, even a chunk of his retirement. And given the scandal, the judge sided with her. Nick went from being a respected professor with a stable life to a disgraced, unemployed guy fighting to keep his savings intact. Meanwhile, Ashley, who thought she was upgrading, was now stuck with a man who had no job and a bitter ex-wife draining him dry. I could only imagine the tension in their new happy home. I went back to work, back to the gym, back to actually enjoying my life. No more late-night worries. No more wondering if I wasn't good enough. Turns out I wasn't the one who needed to change. And watching their perfect little world crumble, that was all the closure I needed. It didn't take long for Ashley's dream life to start unraveling. Nick wasn't quite the knight in shining armor she thought he was. Once the dust settled from his firing, his life became one giant mess. His wife dragged him through a nasty divorce, took half of everything, and bled him dry with alimony and legal fees. He wasn't the confident professor anymore. He was just another guy trying to stay afloat. And Ashley? She wasn't much better off. With her suspension from school, she had nothing to do but sit at home and watch her perfect little world crumble. Nick started distancing himself. Less time together, fewer texts, no more romantic dinners. Turns out, it's easy to play the role of the charming mentor when you have a stable career and a solid reputation. But when you're jobless, financially drained, and dealing with a vindictive ex-wife, the romance fizzles out pretty fast. She tried to hold on to him, but he was slipping away. He had his own problems now, and Ashley was just another one of them. The irony? She had thrown away everything for this guy, and now he was treating her like an afterthought. Then, out of the blue, she reached out to me. The message was short, casual, like we were old friends catching up. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just to talk. Said she missed our conversations, how we used to be able to talk about anything. I knew exactly what this was. She wasn't looking for closure. She was looking for a safety net. And I wasn't about to be that guy. But curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to meet. She looked different when I saw her. The confidence was gone. Her posture, her expression. It all screamed uncertainty. She fidgeted, played with her coffee cup, eyes darting around like she was searching for the right words. She started slow, reminiscing about our past, laughing at old memories. Then came the regrets. She admitted things hadn't turned out the way she expected, that she had been going through a lot back then, that she had felt pressured into making certain choices. Then came the big one. She told me she missed me, that she had made a mistake, that she wished things had been different. And finally, she asked me if I'd ever consider giving U.S. another chance. I won't lie. There was a time when hearing that would have meant everything to me. But now it just felt empty, like a bad joke that wasn't funny anymore. I took a deep breath, smiled, and thanked her, not for the apology, not for the regrets, but for the lesson. Then I stood up, left some cash for the coffee, and walked away. She didn't chase after me, didn't call my name. She just sat there, staring, realizing that, for the first time in her life, she had lost the one thing she never thought she would: me. As I stepped outside, the air felt lighter, like I had finally left behind the weight of everything she had put me through. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Walking away from Ashley that day wasn't just about closing a chapter. It was about reclaiming my life. No more looking back. No more what-ifs. I was done being the guy who sacrificed everything for someone who wouldn't have lifted a finger for me. First order of business: clearing out the past. I sold anything that reminded me of her, our old furniture, the gift she gave me, even the car we bought together. Gone. I didn't need ghosts haunting my new start. I traded that car in for something brand new, something that was mine and mine alone. Then I quit my job, the same dead-end job I had been grinding at for years to support her dreams. I had been too comfortable, too afraid to take risks. But now, I was free to do what I wanted. I took a chance and started my own business, something I had put off for way too long. It wasn't easy, but every late night and early morning was for me this time, not for someone else's future. I hit the gym, hard, not just to get in shape, but to build a version of myself that felt strong, inside and out. It became my therapy, my place to push myself, to prove that I was in control again. And yeah, I started noticing changes, physically, mentally, even in the way I carried myself. I wasn't the same guy who got walked over. Then came the move. I packed my bags, left town, and started fresh somewhere new. No shared memories. No familiar places that reminded me of late-night arguments or broken promises. Just me, a new city, and a blank slate. Funny thing about moving on? The universe tends to put people in your path who understand exactly what you've been through. That's how I met Sarah. She wasn't some rebound or some desperate attempt to fill a void. She was someone who had been through the same fire I had. Divorce, betrayal, the whole mess. And somehow, we just got each other. No pretense, no baggage. Just two people who knew what it meant to rebuild from the ground up. Months passed, and I barely thought about Ashley. Until one day, my phone buzzed. Her name on the screen. I stared at it for a second, debating whether to open it. Curiosity won. The message was simple. Hope you're happy. I still think about you. For a brief moment, I almost laughed. Not out of spite, not out of anger, just out of sheer disbelief. She had shattered everything, walked away without a second thought, and now she wanted to know if I was happy, like she had the right to ask. I locked my phone, put it back in my pocket, and didn't respond. Because I was happy, and she was just another lesson I had learned the hard way. Some people don't deserve a second thought, let alone a second chance. That night, I sat on my balcony, sipping a beer, watching the city lights. The air was cool, crisp, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. No baggage, no regrets. Just a fresh start, exactly the way I wanted it.